Not many is a very raw, green graduate. And at college, we've been taught a lot of things about species selection and care of plantations and how these things could be managed to get the best result. And to me, not many was a revelation, because there it was, textbook forestry, perfect forestry, beautiful forestry, and productive forestry, better than any lecturer could ever picture. And there was no doubt to me that every tree of Knockmany showed one thing. It showed the enthusiasm and the dedication of the forester in charge of it. That enthusiasm and that dedication has even carried over to his successors. Because I think there's a few plantations in Knockmany that would be felled over the dead bodies of Noel Parker and Jim Galbraith. And if you can infect others with enthusiasm, it's a great gift. But you know, forests aren't only trees, they're people. And there's a saying, an old saying, one often quoted by Bill Wright, that good men only work for good men. And again, I'll never forget going into Knockmany as probably the greenest and newest of the forestry staff. And the kindness and the help and the cooperation which I was given by men like Huey Shields and Jack Hughes and Peter Donnelly, Tom Campbell, Joe Slavey, who worked there and were willing to accept me when they knew none at all as a member of the team to look after that forest. And that spirit could only be generated by an enthusiast, John McSorley. I've mentioned Clark before. Clark and John McSorley had a wonderful relationship. Great respect, mutual, for each other's ability, and an utter desire to kill each other, which they frequently were only just prevented from doing. But no matter what Clark might have said about John McSorley, there was one thing noticeable. If there was an awkward job, if there was a rush order, if he needed advice, and God knows Clark never admitted he needed advice, but if he needed it, where did the awkward jobs go? Where did the rush orders go? Not many. And that is where he went for his advice. I think there's one story of that relationship I could risk, though I'm breaking a convention. I think there are three things you're never supposed to talk about in after-dinner speeches: politics, religion, and women. Now, John, you can stop blushing because I know nothing about your love life. You're quite safe now. But there's a wee bit of politics in this one. In the days, we all have to do sort of forms and returns. And one of those returns is a thing called planting return. And planting returns have to be coloured, different colour of pencil for every species. And before we all got codified and budgetized and stultified into sort of coherent uniformity, it was up to the lad putting the return in what colour he used for what species. Well, one morning, I had an office immediately below Clark, and the floor started to vibrate, and the feet started to stamp up and down, and splutters and coughs and he fetched for his bags, and wee bits of plaster started to come down on me. So after about 10 minutes, I thought that when it cooled down, I'd better go and see what all that is about, like the bunny. And there was Clark, sitting looking at John McSorley's planting return for Bar Cross. And you said there were 3 species planted for Bar Cross that year, and no colour meant what species. You had 3 little boxes down the side of the map, showing the colour against the letters of the species. And John had used 3 colours: orange, white, and green. All I got was a stop back and back. Back when the office coffee was red, white, and blue. I think if there's one outstanding feature of John's forestry, it is enthusiasm. Despite the fact that he avoided the financial disaster of becoming a district officer. You know what these we have of conservation, of education, of exhibits, of public relations, that was all going on not many 20 years ago. They turned out superb exhibits, brilliant things, for instance, one show, the Upper Valley show, absolutely brilliant. The only thing that sometimes got a little confused, and is just as well, were the accounts. John's greatest enthusiasm, I think, is probably forest recreation. And I wonder, would you agree with me, looking at his career, that there were possibly two golden periods in this. The first was to be the early years, of which I only saw the result and not the work, for the creation of that forest of Knockmany, which I referred to before. But the second, I imagine, has been maybe the last 10 years or so, when the direction of the RIC over about half of Northern Ireland has given them the scope to create and to make the facilities which I imagine he had long dreamed of. John did not accept new concepts and new ideas. He created them. And the memorials to his genius in this respect will be a mark of the forests in West Ulster forevermore. So how do I sense John McSorley as a forester? A lot of words come to mind. Good, excellent, superlative, brilliant. None of these express what I mean. I can express that very simply in one way. John McSorley is the best forester I have ever known. John was a man and a God. To me, he personifies one thing. He personifies the best possible kind of Irishman, which he isn't, of course, he's a God. But nevertheless, because John worked for the good of the country he lived in, without fear, without favor, regardless of one of his vital influences, the first word he dealt with. He was more interested in his country and the work he could do for it than what he got out of it, simply because of an overwhelming love of Ireland and its people. You know, when you looked into a new community as I did in the Upper Valley many years ago, the locals judge you and you judge them. And one of the yardsticks the locals have for judging you is who you know and sort of who you work with. And it didn't take me very long to twig that if you said you knew John McSorley and you worked with John McSorley, you got instant acceptance, instant help, instant kindness, and down to the bank and offered even cash checks for you. I think indeed this is probably one of the greatest tributes one can have to respect oneself in the local community, and tonight's attendance merely adds to it. I would like to end possibly on a more personal note. I've tried to think how I can express what having worked with John means to me. I can't express it, but maybe I can put it very simply like this. You know, when you land there in the morning just having woken up, you tend to think of what the day ahead holds in store. It could be good, middling, bad. I mean, if you're A, the workers left and the boss is coming down with the van to start with. Sorry, sir. If you've got to sit in the office and write a report, well, that's not so good either. You've got a day out in the woods, that should be a good day. But for the last 20 years, if I've woken up in the morning and been able to say I'm going to spend the day with John McSorley, then it was going to be a good day. So for 20 years of very good days, can I just say to John, thank you, inadequate, so thank you.
I must start by taking one correction to what Andy said there. He said, John, you couldn't hit, you could hit the car and you could hit a feedback. But on the old mission that I do some years ago, you couldn't hit a divisional officer. I'd have done it years ago. Maybe we should take it back then. But I would like to say, to add to what Mr. Phillips has said, how wonderful it is to have such a gathering here, foresters' wives, friends of forestry, and in particular our colleagues from across the border. I think John this and Mr. McSorley, this is a tremendous tribute to you. It's wonderful to have such a gathering. A rare occasion, we don't have them often, and so much more appreciated when we have this tremendous gathering. On my wall in the office in that great place in Belfast, I have two photographs depicting groups of foresters. One of them taken in 1933 with 11 men on it, and one taken in 1960 with over 100 men on it. Now, both organizations ran the forestry division at some time or other, and one could go on a long way about the comparison of the numbers and the work we did. But that's not what I'm mentioning. What I want to say about that is, in the bottom right-hand corner, the one with the Q number in, is a good-looking, tough character, way in age below all the others that are surrounding him, but obviously exuding tremendous enthusiasm and energy. You can see it even though that print now is over 40 years old. This is coming out there, and it's still coming out today, 40 years later, the enthusiasm and the energy. I think that one of the other many records that's created tonight and that we're putting on record is the fact that now that John is retiring, that the last man on that particular photograph that has been involved directly in forestry for some time. But I certainly won't throw that photograph away, because when I'm having all the trouble, the phones, the problems coming through, all I need to do is look at that little group of dedicated men up on the wall, and one can see this team spirit almost in that photograph. I think the photograph, and I know a number of us have copies of this, and we're very glad to get them from John many years ago, that this is a real tribute to true foresters, to the foresters who started off the forestry division in this country many years ago. In many professions, people get out of date, techniques get out of date, and even in our own system, we're getting new methods of felling trees, of planting of trees, but the growing of a tree and the growing of a forest never changes. I think that to do it properly, to have a healthy, prospering forest, you've got to understand trees. And it's obvious that this little group of men were born foresters. They went into the forestry because this is what they wanted. They didn't go out for money like some of us do nowadays. They joined forestry because they were countrymen, and they really lived forestry. And they are the true foresters. Fortunately, they overlapped with many of us, and we've been able to glean from them a lot of their knowledge, their understanding, and I think this has helped to develop our forestry service to what it is today. And we'll always be very grateful for that point. Johnny certainly has never pushed these ideas to anybody. He's never taken a schoolmaster approach to it. He's done it tactfully. We have just by talking to him and meeting him, I think everyone in the service has gained a tremendous amount from just this contact with John McSorley. And as Mr. Phillips and many others have said, he is leaving behind him not just the usual monument to the forester leaves of beautiful stands, and there's certainly no better stands than those, there's not many, but he's leaving more permanent memorials in his work that he's carried out over the last 5 years during the RIC. I think, as some other people have said, he really found, I think, his niche there. I will always remember that the first time I've seen him since he'd taken up his job connected with RIC. A really happy man, a man who thoroughly enjoyed. I think he always enjoyed forestry, but I do believe that the last 2 years have been as happy as any, in that he was realizing that he was providing something for the country that he could leave and that could be enjoyed not only by the foresters but by all of the present and the future generations of people in this country. And I think we, as foresters, owe a great deal to Johnny for his help. I think the people of this country owe a tremendous debt. And I don't think people really appreciate and can comprehend just how much is owed to Johnny by the people of this and future generations of this country. And I would just like to finish by saying to John and Mrs. McSorley how much we appreciate them, how much we hope and know that we're going to have a wonderful retirement. Thank you very much for all your contributed to Mr. and Mrs. McSorley.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a few letters and telegrams here which people who could stay with us have asked me to read out. The first from Alf Rogers, Ballina. I have been identified with John R.I.C. over the past 5 years, with frequent meetings and exchanges of notes, and much as he is appreciated, I don't believe that it is fully understood the amount of work he has put into this, and general forestry, and the outstanding contributions that he has made. This will be increasingly evident in the years to follow as leisure time goes on, and this country becomes a mecca for tourists. I would like you to read this tribute and to wish John and his wife a very happy retirement. From Bob Denny and Draperstown. I'm sorry I cannot be present on this occasion, but I would appreciate very much if you convey to John and Mrs. McSorley, on behalf of my wife and myself, sincere good wishes for a long and happy retirement. Now, some of these next ones are going to require interpretation about the McSorley family because I know who they're from. To John McSorley, congratulations and best wishes on your retirement. Margaret and the Hustler. This one has no name, but it originated in Greenland. Congratulations on your retirement. Have a tremendous time. From Matt and Grace, best wishes for many happy years of retirement. Congratulations to the head of the family tree, and wishing you many more years to flourish. Love, Nora, Norrie, and the girls. Now, just before I asked Mrs. Parkin to make this presentation, I would say that it proves to me one thing. You never completely get to know anybody. Because there are two things about this presentation which have surprised me, or should have surprised me. One which did and one which didn't. The one which didn't surprise me is the fact that when John picked something, he left me with an embarrassing situation of having got rid of less than half of the presentation. So not only is his object going to have to be presented to him, but there'll have to be a fairly fat one to go with it. The modesty I would have expected. The fact that John McSorley, with his well-known love of careful writing, would have picked a death, I was embarrassed. I also feel that I now have what to me is a unique honor, and an honor which I will treasure for the rest of my life. Not only that I can ask that this presentation be made, not that I can ask that it be made on behalf of the staff of the Forestry Division of Northern Ireland, because I have done that before. But I have never before been able to ask for a presentation to be made on behalf of all the foresters of Ireland, because there are many contributors to this who are not in this division. And that to me, and maybe I'm just being greedy about it, but to me selfishly it is a tremendous honor that I can do this and ask Mrs. Parkin of all the foresters of Ireland to make this presentation to John and Mrs. McSorley. Mrs. Parkin.
Ladies and gentlemen, what can I say? Thank you. Very, very difficult and good to express my thanks to you all. I made a few short notes here because as you grow old, you can be excused a lot of things. So I'll make it as short as possible because you've been sitting there a long time. When one reaches retirement age, one is rather inclined to look back rather than look forward. And looking back, I have no regret. Forestry has given me a wonderful life, and I think part of the risk is health. I can't remember in my 50 years with the ministry ever sending in a doctor's certificate. It has given me a number of surprises too. And the first one was, as a young man, I was selected rather unexpectedly to go to the forestry school at Benmore in Scotland. I was there for 2 years and returned, and in a very short time I was transferred to Knockman. I have heard a lot about Knockman. It was the elite forest of the forestry division. I spent 27 years there. And I was in complete charge. I measured the timber, valued it and sold it. Sometimes I never saw anyone from headquarters, sometimes the last 3 months. So I was really monarch of all I surveyed. What an experience for a young forester. They have always responsibility and satisfaction. I was delighted. Now to share this experience with me, I fell in love and I married one of the nicest girls in the Clogher Valley. And in the little gate lodge that enters to the forest, between us, were here 6 of a family. And I'm delighted that they're all here tonight. And during my 27 years at Knockmany, I helped in a small way to train, practical training of some of the young foresters. In fact, I think I put about 28 through my hands at Knockmany. Some of these foresters now are well up to date. But not the young boys that they were then. You heard one of them speaking here tonight, Andy McLean was one of them. Now, I don't want to mention names, but I think there's one man who's to be mentioned here tonight too. He was a great character. He was also a first-class forester, the late E.T. Clark. We had many agreements, but we had no disagreements. But I can recall one instance. This was during the war, and I think I told it on a previous occasion. We had difficulties in getting the pickpockets away from the fort in London Derry. Called with me one day, and they asked me to come down to clear up the difficulties in Stratton. So we went down and we spent some considerable time there. With the result, it was very near 3 o'clock, and I was starving. So he said, "Come on, we get something to eat." Well, come to ask me twice. We went into a small cafe, and there was a waitress there in charge. She was about 6 feet high and about 40 vertical. Real fat. So A.G. was in one of his jovial moods, and he said to her, "We serve cow." "Sit down," she says, "we serve anyway." You heard another man speak tonight, that I had a close association with him for 15 years. That was no harm. An Englishman, of course. And, but I think I helped to convert him in one way. Because in latter years, when we were going around the forest together, we would come on some drains that weren't very satisfactory, maybe too narrow, too shallow. And he would pass the remark, "Look at that rat," you know. And then I could hear him talking, "Oh, he's a grand wee man. He's a good wee man." Typical Tyrone language. So I think he'll develop into a good Irishman yet. Well, I don't think either that I should forget the wonderful comradeship that I had with the Parkin. It was mentioned here, and I was given a lot of credit for this. But I think the credit must go to the men that I served around. I shall always cherish their friendship and loyalty. And I certainly will not for the cooperation and help. And this certainly simplified the job I had to do. And don't let us forget the forester's wife, who provided Monty a welcome cup of tea, particularly on a cold winter's day. Well, I don't think I'll continue anymore. I think there's enough said. It's nice to know you're nice to know. Your kindly expressions are greatly appreciated. And this wonderful gift that I will cherish as long as I live. To you, my friends and colleagues, may I, on behalf of Molly and myself, thank you for all you have done and have said and done now and in the past. I thank you very sincerely.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a final thing, could I ask you to raise your glasses to wish long life, health, and happiness to John and Molly. John. That ends the official part of the evening. Now we